Hello, my name is Dominic Underhallhouse and welcome to another episode of Moonbreaker. In today's episode we're going to be looking at how to go about list building with the new resource system on Experimental. So, a lot of you will have heard that there's there's the experimental server that you can go ahead and look at how to switch across to it and look at what some of the things that are going to be heading our way potentially in the future. Some things are a bit flash in the pan, they're here for sometimes even a few hours and then they're gone. But this looks like it's one that might be here to stay, so I thought it was worth doing a video to talk about how to do list building in the current system. So, what I want to have a quick look at is what the resource system is first. So, we no longer just have Cinder. So what we've got is Cinder and a resource that's currently being deliberated as what it's going to be named. It's looking like either leadership or morale at the moment. It's currently a vote on the Discord as to what it should be. Now, on your captain icon here, you'll see we've got two little Cinder icons, one either side. Now, the one on the right is how much Cinder you gain each turn, and Cinder is now only used to use abilities. So it's a different resource, it's entirely just for that side of thing. And then for the other side of it, it's currently looking like Cinder, but it's actually just a resource for leadership. And what leadership does is leadership gives you the ability to deploy resources, deploy your units. So you'll get 3 leadership per turn, and you'll get 2 Cinder per turn just for having your captain. That seems pretty straightforward, but the only way of getting more leadership is to take more turns. So at the moment, every turn that you wait, you get an additional bit of leadership. And then with Cinder though, it's slightly different. So what we need to do is come into the unit screen. So if you come and have a look, it says something like Detonia that uses Cinder. If you click on the inspect here, we'll see that she also generates Cinder as well. So some units will generate more resources for you to use, so you can use more abilities in a turn. Now, this has obviously got upsides and downsides. The upside being you can start doing more things per turn. The games are a lot quicker. They feel really dynamic, really sort of interactive. However, the downside is your opponent can kill your units that generate Cinder and then make some of the other units a bit more irrelevant. So to counteract this, a lot of the units that use abilities also generate Cinder, and between that and your captain, most of the time you can use at least those abilities per turn. So when it comes to list building, you now no longer just think about what you want to play in which order, you also need to think about how much Cinder they generate to see if you're going to be able to use the abilities as well. So first thing you need to think about as well is when you start the game, your first turn you actually start off with 5 leadership instead of going from 1 and ramping all the way up slowly. You actually start with 5. So with 5 you need to look at what you can deploy, and so you can do any combination of things that add up to 5, or you can just save some for the following turn. So I've put together a list, and what I want to show you is how I've been looking at doing this and what logic I've used when building the list, and then try it out in an AI game. So here is my current list. So it's not perfect, there's a lot of tweaks I'd need to make. You'll see some units in here that you wouldn't normally see, but that's because we've got some very interesting balance changes happening on this patch as well. So the first thing I want to look at is my first turn deployment. And obviously with 5 Cinder there's a lot of variety as to what you can do here. And so what my plan is to do is actually, this is to be an aggressive list with a bit of a control finish if we need it, which is coming into it a little bit later. So my first turn, Maximus is currently a 2 Cinder unit, so Maximus is one of my choices. We've got Taria Arsenal, and Taria is a 1-drop unit now, so that's only 3 of my Cinder. And my third choice is going to be Deadeye. So the reason I've gone for that, Deadeye has been nerfed, it's only 1 attack now, and Taria also nerfed down to 1 attack quite a while ago, but still has the same things, but is only 1 Cinder. So the reason I want to choose these to deploy is, first of all, it puts 1, 2, 3, 4 additional attack on the battlefield for 5 Cinder, which is pretty reasonable. It's the same as putting, say, an Arya in place or something like that. An Arya and a Maximus is actually the same amount of damage, but it's more bodies. More bodies means more options, it also means more health, and it's harder for the opponent to kill. But importantly, in the new system, the reason I want to do this is because on the following turn, so none of these, apart from Deadeye, generate any Cinder. So Deadeye generates 1. So that means on our first turn coming through, we'll have 2 Cinder from Zax and 1 from Deadeye. And what that means is that if we're in a game where we want to try and get control on the board, we want to kill an enemy unit quicker, we can actually use Maximus for 2 damage fairly safely. We've got Taria for 1, so that's 3. We've got Deadeye for 1, and that's 4. And we can actually use Taria's ability and Deadeye's ability, because Cinder goes away at the end of your turn now, both on Zax here, and so that adds another 4 damage almost guaranteed to hit on there as well. So we've actually got potentially 8 damage turn 1, and we can start looking at getting that tempo advantage. Following on from that, we gain 3 leadership per turn, and the Cinder space in our units. So what I've gone for here is I've gone for a 3-drop unit in Aria. The reason I wanted Aria is specifically because Aria is exactly 3 Cinder, so it's something you can just wait a turn, play it down. It's still fairly decent attacking stats and also generating Cinder as well. And my other 3 Cinder unit here is Toner Mystic Manteo, but we'll come back to that in a moment. The other things I've put in here are both Jailbreak and Axial Pyro, and Jailbreak is now currently a 2-drop. So Jailbreak is just a utility piece. The assists are currently removed from the game as well, so Jailbreak will help you lock down an enemy captain, lock down enemy crew that you need to. There's far less ways of dealing with a Jailbreak now, and at 2 Cinder, really powerful unit. And Axial Pyro as another Cinder generation resource. It's something that's, for 2 Cinder, it may be more relevant sometimes than Taria, so that's a choice to play. And pairing with 2 Cinder units means that two leadership units means the following turn you have 4 leadership, and at that point I want to be looking at playing Turncoat. So Turncoat is just another unit that's got a really good value ability to it, and I can use that to start taking control of games. With Toner Mystic Manteo, Toner is actually a lot better now. So Unspent Cinder, is, as always, goes to your captain, which is perfect, but now with it costing 3, that happens more often, and it also generates 3 Cinder per turn, so it's a really good fuel for getting a lot of your aggressive attacks in. So even if you're in a race situation, Toner's even better now, because you can attack and defend with 1 unit. And lastly we've got Florio. So Florio is the most expensive you can get, 6 leadership to play, and also between him and the captain doesn't quite generate enough Cinder to use his ability, so you need to use other units to do so as well. But in the late game, Florio will be absolutely going to be able to take over, and between him and Toner, you've got everything you need to start getting that value. So this is designed for a really fast start out the gates, to keep applying pressure, and then slowly, while that pressure is on, play out our more expensive units to try and get that win con going. So when building the list, I have taken into consider the Cinder curve. I have taken into account, the actual leadership as well, how much we can play per turn. My normal turn 1 will be, like I said, those 3 units. My following turn there is most likely going to be one of my 2-drops, Jailbreak if I can, to keep applying that pressure to an enemy captain. And then the following turn after that is either going to be Aria or Turncoat the majority of the time, or maybe Shrapnel if I want to get, don't need to be quite as aggressive, but want a bit of a sturdy body. And then, the rest of the game is just value units as and when we can afford them. So we have got a game plan, we have got a strategy, we know what we're doing turn after turn, and what I want to do is just show you how this works just quickly in an AI game. So if you enjoy this content and you find this sort of thing useful, please do go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the like button, let me know in the comments if you would build the list differently. I'd really like to hear what your list building theories are in this current format. And then what I also want you to do is, if you feel like you can support a little bit extra, you can go ahead and head over to the Patreon, but any single way that you can support me is really, really appreciated. But for now, I'm going to jump into an AI game and show you how this works in practice. So the assists at the moment, you do have to select them, but they don't count as part of your list. You don't actually get to play with them in game. So we're just going to see how well this list functions in a 1v1 setting. And I think you'll notice as well, the additional deployment at the beginning of the game, getting that 5 leadership immediately to put a few things down, it feels a lot more like a war game. It feels like you've got that early deployment and things carry on from there. And it's a really great addition to the game in my opinion. I really like having a bit of a start here. So here, this is the map where you don't have a great line of sight to try and get an early attack, but we are an aggressive roster. So we're going to move up here, take our shot and hope we miss, which is pretty reasonable. But with 5 leadership here to use, we can do a couple of things. What we should have actually done here is considered whether we could grav disc somewhere useful. So I'm actually going to grav disc in this direction and just try and get as much movement out of this as we can, so that we can deploy even more aggressively. So we're going to put Maximus down over here, because he's easily got the move around. We want Taria somewhere near our captain, so just starting in range here maybe. And then we're going to put Deadeye in as well, maybe even Deadeye over here to, again, give Deadeye a few options as well. So this is our really aggressive start. You can see we've moved really far up into our opponent, and the interesting thing about this is so they can take a shot onto us, but what we can do is we can look at clearing their units out. So depending on what they play, we're going to be trying to play the pressure game rather than anything else. So they've still got more resources left. Obviously this opponent is clearly not quite used to the new resource system, maybe the AI hasn't developed. So what we can do here is we can actually just go for a really aggressive play instead, and see if we can play things, in terms of a race more than anything else. So So as I said before, the Cinder doesn't go away. Sorry, does go away, sorry, at the end of your turn. So the best thing you can do is just be aggressive with it, or make sure you get good use out of it, I should say, rather. So we're just going to move in for this and take that shot. So missing that's actually quite impressive. Move over here, take another one. There we got that, and then we're going to apply pressure here as well. So this situation is actually where something like a blindside or Esley could be nice, but as we said before, here we want to see what we can do. We could just deploy in a jailbreak, which stops Antios doing anything particularly worrying, but honestly here, I think I just want to get an Aria and apply more pressure to the enemy captain. So hopefully they'll use a good amount of their leadership here, and we can show, you know, just how far ahead you can get, because they're not actually going to be able to get enough damage to kill a single unit here, it doesn't look like. They've got up to 6, but they're not going to be able to do that straight away, and we can really just try and push this pressure in. Ooh, okay, that crit's quite a big deal. If they had like a Scattervine or something here, that could be good, but that's the best crit that they can do. Okay, so the AI is clearly not using the leadership correctly, unfortunately, so we can't quite demonstrate it as well as we might. But we can just move in here, keep applying this pressure, and bear in mind this doesn't cost us any deployment resource anymore. No leadership spent on this whatsoever, so we'll just move in close, get this pressure going. We've got ourselves a crit as well, and more units getting close is better for us. So we have got rapid fire already, I believe. Yep, so we can actually just use stillness here. Make sure Aria hits as well. Go for a big hit here. And now that we've pushed them into a corner, we can actually pretty much just block them in place with jailbreak. It's not like going to be physically in range, but it's going to be pretty hard for them to get away from this. So yeah, so you can see there, this is how we've been able to use our resources. We've deployed them every turn. We've got a huge amount of units on the battlefield early on, and we're also able to use the aggressive options like Taria's ability really, really quickly. So this has put, you know, a lot of pressure on the opponent. I actually feel like this list, I'm unsure about where the end game should be going, but I feel like this is a good direction because we should be in a position to be able to basically take turns off in the future, and hopefully that's something that, you know, would allow us to win these games in a more realistic scenario. So here I'm just going to take this attack, move back here to make sure we can Ozos onto Sax, get the big hits, hope for a crit, and if not, just kill them with a jailbreak. And you can see these games are a lot faster paced. Because we've got 3 units on the battlefield already, we wouldn't normally be able to kill a captain that quickly in the current meta, and I actually think it's a really good thing for the pace of the game. You know, you don't have that ramping up, you get straight into the action, and it's really enjoyable. It still has tactical play. I think it may still need, you know, some tweaking and balance changes, but everything does. But I think this is a really good option, you know, for the future of Moonbreaker. So that's a bit of insight into how to build a list in the experimental server and, you know, the new resource system. I wouldn't be surprised if we see tweaks to things like, you know, the starting resource, the amount you get per turn, which units generate what, the costs of units. All of this is, you know, really just sort of up in the air at the moment, and I think it's a really, really great way to be. So if you've enjoyed this, again, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Go ahead and join us in all the links below. So we've got the Patreon, we've got Twitch, we've got, you know, liking the channel, you can comment. All of this just really does improve my day. I check every single notification I get on these, and most importantly, thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.